Cody Lack, what do we got?
Yeah, man, let's jump into this show. Are the Carolina Panthers more aggressive than ever before? And yeah, I think that we have a very good reason to say yes. And but first, we're gonna, as always, start with these quarterbacks as we do, and then we'll break down some of this new information from Peter King. So if we do a real quick mock draft roundup, right now everyone is still penciling us for C.J. Stroud, except for Mike Tannenbaum. Everyone seems to believe that C.J. Stroud is going to be the #1 pick for the Carolina Panthers. However, Peter King put out some very interesting information recently, and I felt like it was relevant enough for us to talk about. This is from Peter King. This is from his article. Check it out. He said, "You're the one who started that." Panthers coach Frank Reich said to me at the league meetings about this quarterback hype thing I wrote about in March. Reich has been a quarterback coach, coordinator, or head coach for 17 years, and in all but 6 games of those 17 years, his quarterback was 6'4" or taller. He told me the height of the quarterback is not really a thing, so the 5'10" Bryce Young and 6'3" CJ Stroud are both very much alive in the running for the first pick of the draft, and I believe him absolutely. But the longtime friend of Reich's told me, the height thing is legit with him. Though Reich hasn't told him so, this friend would be surprised if Young were Reich's top choice. Reich's not saying. The other thing I hear is several, and this is one of the things that got people buzzing on Twitter.
Yes.
So the other thing I hear is several influential voices in the organization favor Young. That doesn't mean Young will be the pick, not at all. This is a collaborative choice, and the Panthers will still have organizational meetings ahead to set their draft board with finality. But before he took the Carolina Panthers quarterback job, Josh McCown reportedly told friends he loved Young. What that means after he studies all the passers, I don't know. I asked one coach who studied the top quarterbacks and 2 top analysts who have also studied them and how they have them ranked after the pro day. The coach I gave an anonymity. Blah, that's a tongue twister.
Anonymity.
Anonymity. There you go. That's the one. Todd McShay of ESPN and Daniel Jeremiah were the others. I did not tell of the 3 opinions to any of the others. Each of the 3 has the order of the top 3 as Bryce Young, C.J. Stroud, Anthony Richardson, and Will Levis. Was 4, and McShay and Jeremiah, but the coach said he's not sold on Levis and believes he deserves a 2nd-round grade. This also generated some buzz right here. The game has changed in how quarterbacks are viewed. Drew Brees and Russell Wilson, both height challenged, have seen to that. Still, what's notable to me is that we're talking about a 5'10" and 1/8, 190-poundish quarterback without Kyler Murray's speed, possibly being the top quarterback picked in the draft, over a 6'3" Stroud who sliced and diced the national champs with by far the best defense in college football. Just watch Young, the coach said. When I watch tape, I don't see size. He doesn't play small. This follows another team official who told me before the meetings Young's height is not a disadvantage. Well, it is, but he might still be picked first on draft night, assuming Reich is on board. Last thing of note, Frank Reich is not one to brawl about players, even one as important as this one. He is a consensus seeker. I think he likes Young and likes him a lot. I just don't know if he likes him more than Stroud. But if he favors Stroud, and if the majority of the influencers inside the Panthers love Young, I believe Reich will be okay with picking Young. So my question to all of you is, are we believing this? Is this all just smokescreens? And do we think that right now most people in the Panthers organization prefer Bryce Young over C.J. Stroud?
Man, this is a non-story. And I mean, you got to write stories like this at draft time. This is why I hate, this is why I get irritated by draft coverage. It's all speculation. We've been covering everything that all of these guys have said. None of these guys got real true inside sources to what the Panthers are going to do at this pick. Nobody's leaking information right now unless it needs to be leaked, right? In fact, I would argue that they have not made their decision as yet. I mean, as they are working through the process. This is what all of these stories, every single one of them are based on the exact things we've heard in press conferences, right? So you hear something. You hear one thing right here is you hear somebody start talking about, oh, Frank Wright has never had a small quarterback. And then we'll talk about that. And that becomes a storyline that infiltrates the narrative. Then you hear this is that he says, look, he goes on to say, no, is the size, his height alone. And he said this at the combine, I think, or at one of the press conferences. His size alone is not the deterrent, but you do have to consider that his size is a factor to think about, right? We know that. We know, too, that like every one of these things we have heard. We have heard, look, when they say people within the organization like Bryce Young, it's based on a snippet from David Tepper or more likely, I remember Scott Fitterer saying, yeah, he's a guy that is a elite quarterback, right? They take this one thing and what they do is any single person, every single one of these articles, and really arguably your position, if you believe the Carolina Panthers are split over this, if you believe Frank Reich's a consensus seeker and that the other guys want this and he's willing to go around all of this, you're really just looking for it's verification bias to what you already think and what you already believe. This is no new information to any of this. Everybody has said from the beginning, these two guys are elite, like the talents.
Right.
They're the top talents. And we have heard all of this crap about Russell Wilson is based on stuff last year that Scott Fitterer said about height and batted balls and talking about Russell Wilson. So it's just like we're piecing together data to create a narrative that we want rather than what is really informed. We don't know who the heck in that room is just in love with who.
Right.
And if you really truly want the most insight you could probably get is just go in and listen to Josh McCown talk about that film review. That's probably the best source of information. But all of this draft hype is speculation. And what they have to do is they got to go write a blog about it.
Played well. These guys played hard.
Go write a blog about it. No, that's it. I mean, I don't think this is what you guys take off.
I mean, I don't think that we're picking number one. I don't know that there's many smoke and mirrors that are to be had with this. I don't have the feeling that we're playing this game of trading back and trying to recoup some of those picks or anything along those lines. I don't think Houston's even interested in that. I think at this point in time, the Panthers are going to be taking a quarterback number one. There's not going to be a game that they're playing. There's not going to be anything crazy there. I don't really know why there would be smoke screens. This doesn't make a tremendous amount of sense to say there's smoke screens. However, I think it's fair to say I've watched, like I said, I haven't watched any others other than CJ Stroud and Young. But the gap between them, like as far as even if you take into consideration the size, like the gap for me, I was a big Stroud fan. I don't think that gap is as much as I thought it was, as much as I wanted Stroud. And so the idea that Young is a special player is something that I think you could see with the playmaking ability that he had, the decision making that he had. I mean, it was just the only thing that there was really not much that Josh McCown, if you guys watched that, it was an Underdog Fantasy film breakdown. The only thing that I think he had an issue with was that he misplaced one of the balls. Like he was in, I think it was a bit of an unfair comparison between him and Stroud when they did that, because they did his best game of his entire career against Georgia.
Oh, and they did the worst game for
exactly.
But they had a reason. They tried to explain it, but I do think that's a good point to make, though. You're bringing up.
But even with that, I mean, when you look at what Young is able to do, and it was clear that there is a difference in talent level. I'm not saying that Stroud had the benefit of, I'm not using that against him, but I mean, I will say that Young seemed to be really good with his decision making, and so I could see.
What's your takeaway from it?
Their eyes.
What's your takeaway from what you learned about Bryce Young today?
I think Bryce Young is the most mentally prepared quarterback to start in the NFL than any quarterback that I would have seen in the past. And I think it has a lot to do with his upbringing. He was his father's a psychologist. So like he's been practiced in a lot of the ways to prepare yourself mentally for some of the worst possible situations. And his father probably helped him tremendously. That's why I think that it's no surprise that he is one of the most calm, most unfazed. Yeah, that's a great way to put it. Unfazed quarterbacks of this draft. Of really a lot of quarterbacks in the past as well. Like even
he's
when
a guy that bowls 300. He's a guy that bowls 300. Not really. I don't know that, but he's a guy that sinks the putt on 18 to win the Masters.
Right.
The pressure is on. He doesn't shrink, even though he is small. One question to you, CK, and then we'll give it to Greg. The one I won't say, I don't know. I haven't watched a ton. I mean, I'm kind of like you. I've just watched a little bit of other people talking about it. Does Bryce Young do anything great and exceptionally better than anybody else? Or is he just really sound at every single thing?
I think that it's, again, this is just off of a limited amount of info. I just spent today watching the film, right? Watching the film breakdown. I didn't even get to watch all the film, right? Obviously, I'm not a film junkie in that respect. I think Bryce Young is above average at everything, which is, I think, a rare enough trait for any quarterback, right? You typically have trade-offs, right? I think Bryce Young is probably the most balanced that we've seen come out of the draft in a while. I don't know that you would consider him elite in any category in particular outside of his decision making.
Yeah, like the ice cold Joe Burrow,
right?
That's important.
Right. Cam Newton had a elite athleticism and an elite arm, right? But he had questionable decision making and other questions about from a character standpoint, right?
Well, accuracy questions.
Right, accuracy, exactly. And typically you see that across the board, even with Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes was considered a gunslinger, a risk taker. He wasn't considered exceptional at anything beyond his arm strength, right? And his accuracy was a question in college, from my recollection. So I mean, Bryce Young just seems to be the most polished quarterback that I think we've seen come out of a draft in a long time.
You're up.
Hey, man.
Greg wants on the mic real quick.
Greg, you're muted. Hey, no, listen, I'm going to let Greg go, but we have to give this very special thank you to Just Don't Care, who gifted another 5 superfan subscriptions in our chat room.
Nice.
To Janny Trejo,
Nice.
Patty Crimes, Carson One, Right Bets, and
Hell
Jesse
yeah.
Flowney. Just Don't Care. You're the man, brother. We love you, dude. Thank you. Appreciate that so much.
No.
Greg, jump in on the convo, brother.
Okay, look, I've been studying and looking at CJ Stroud and Bryce Young footage. And look, I'm going to tell you, I just don't see the difference between the two that makes anybody really, really make a huge difference in their pick, to be honest with you. I think that you can say that maybe one is smarter than the other as far as reading the field, but it's not so significant that it makes that much of a difference. And here's my thing. I'm going to go back to what I've been following on the whole time. I can teach somebody to read the field better. I cannot teach somebody to be taller. Okay. And everybody wants to come at me with these Drew Brees stats and, Drew Brees, this, that. That's great. Drew Brees is 3 inches taller than Bryce Young. 3 inches taller than Bryce Young. Okay. So while I feel like that if we, no matter who we draft in this draft right here, Bryce Young or CJ Stroud, I don't think we're a loser. I think there's a great consolation prize for whoever gets next. But I've even heard of the today the Texans being willing to trade their pickup
Yeah,
to draft out of the number 2 pick to go to number 9 and pick Will Levis.
I don't
hate
believe
this.
that. I don't believe that for a second.
But when I hear that, it makes me wonder, is there a big difference between these two guys, or is one guy hands down the best no matter what, and the other guy is way behind him? I'm going to tell you, I can't see much of a difference between the two. I don't see a ton of great reads when I compare Bryce Young to CJ Stroud. I don't.
Or you actually would say this is, how about this? If Bryce Young's real asset is his decision making, I don't think that I've heard that Stroud had a weakness in decision making.
Right. Like when I watch the footage, like I watch both players and I see like if you pull up Bryce Young and CJ Stroud highlights right now and watch both of them, the 20-minute highlights they put up, maybe 3 out of the first 10, 12 passes they throw for both players, I can look and say that's an interception in the NFL.
I think the thing, though, for Bryce Young, and that people would say, and people that are film junkies, people that are watching this closely, they would say this is Bryce Young does really well when the play doesn't go as planned. And so when the pocket's not perfect, it's got, is that, so we're looking at CJ Stroud saying he's a good decision maker, but he also has time to throw, make the decision. And then we're saying Bryce Young has great decision making and read skills, and the line's not great and some different things. I don't love that argument because I'm like, oh, woe to Alabama and their lack of talent. I will, just for the height thing, say this. Size matters, folks. And for someone who thought their whole life, for their whole adult life, they were 5'10". I went to the doctor one time and they said, or I measured myself and I said 5'10". And then I went to the doctor, maybe
5'9" and a half.
5'9" and 3/4, dude. Or at least my wife says 5'9". Like I felt like this. That girl, you know how they put the thing up, and they put that little thing on your head.
She didn't give you no breathing room.
Dude, I felt like she tried to push me to the center of the earth. Yep. But how about this? Is I really felt I want to be 5'10".
I mean, I feel like at a certain point you're allowed to round up, and it's like, what's 4/4 of an inch, dude?
Well,
like
turns out.
Dude, so okay, look, first off, so let me say something real quick, and then we need to take care of some business here. But listen, I've said this before. After Christian McCaffrey was drafted, love him or hate him, but David Gettleman had a propensity to really drop some knowledge with those words that he would say. And he said that Christian McCaffrey had Luke Kuechly DNA, meaning he was an incredible studier. He was always in the film. He just had a next level dedication to his craft. Okay. Well, if I may speak on behalf of Bryce Young has Luke Kuechly DNA at the most important position in football, at the quarterback position. Nick Saban said himself that as soon as they would be done playing a team, Bryce Young would look over all of the film from that previous game before any of the coaches had a chance to do so. Okay, this man, for all of the things that we say about him being small and undersized, and he is. I mean, if we draft him, he is going to be the smallest quarterback in the NFL without question, right? But with that said, there is nothing more, in my opinion, that Bryce Young could do to make up for his lack of size. He has incredible pocket awareness. He has great touch of the football. Even when he's under pressure, he keeps his eyes downfield. He has such an ability to make people miss in space. And that's why I really, even though he is a small guy, I would not be upset at all if the Carolina Panthers drafted him number 1. And you know what Yeah, go ahead, CK.
I would say before we do business, because I know we got to get this done.
Yeah.
That point I think is important, and even with you saying the smallest quarterback in the NFL, I think it's worth mentioning that he won the Heisman at the size that he is. I know the college is a different world, but where do you think all the NFL players came from? They all came from college. He was, a lot of these people that are in college right now are going to be superstars in the NFL. And they didn't win the Heisman over him, right? So I think that you've got to take that into consideration. That's how special. I mean, even the fact that he is as small as he is, the fact that he is considered as the number one potential overall pick should tell you just how much he is, as far as how much better of a NFL ready quarterback he is than anybody else in this draft. I'm not saying he's going to be the best quarterback. I'm saying, talking about game one, he is going to be the best player on the field between all four of these people. That might change 3 years down the line. And that's to Greg's point, right? That's where you start to really have this conversation of whether or not you want to go with the CJ Stroud, who can develop to have similar traits. And maybe even now that he has the size and the height that you want out of a quarterback, or maybe even an Anthony Richardson, you have that benefit of saying, that they have a higher ceiling, if you will. But Bryce Young, hands down, I don't even think it's close. He's the most pro ready.
Yeah. Listen, all great points. And something cool is these guys are friends with one another, man. They're literally right now training for the draft together. You know what I'm saying? Like, these guys are really good friends. There's some clips of them before the Elite 11 competition that they both participated in, which CJ Stroud won that Elite 11. I mean, there are pictures of them goofing around, joking around. These guys are exceptional young men. That's part of the reason why I'm really happy with both of them.